best team we could be, and me playing my best to help us win.
The Pats have won the AFC East 8 years in a row, and the NBA, 9 straight wins for the Rockets. They will go for 10 tonight against the Pelicans. The Warriors are back home to host the Blazers, and coming up in a couple hours from now, the Yankees will introduce Giancarlo Stanton. I'm Jeff Davis, NBC Sports Radio.
Well, there you are. Hello, everyone. I'm Marky Bilson, your voice of choice for a new generation of Tri-Cities sports fans. The name of the program is Tri-Cities Sports Now on 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities, where we own the Tri-Cities. Best guests, hardest hitting opinions. 1 o'clock, I got Steve Forbes, head coach of the 6-3 East Tennessee State Buccaneers. They go on to play the Xavier Musketeers, old rivalry from the 90s. Remember that ETSU played 3? I thought they had played since then, but this was an opponent that many times, I guess first during 91-92, it had been LaForce. They beat the first time they played Xavier, and then following a couple other times under, I believe, Ed DeChellis. Well, now it's Steve Forbes, and he's got a team that just beat Northern Kentucky, turned around a home-and-home series, first game of the year. ETSU loses almost by 20 points. Last Wednesday, they beat them by more than 10. That's quite a turnaround. And it's quite a positive sign. A victory against Xavier might actually, what would that mean for a team that I picked 5th in the Southern Conference and voted on the media poll as well? I hope that you will be joining us on Facebook Live if you by any chance like what you're listening to. I want to hear that again. Go to Facebook Live. We've got nearly 500 followers on Facebook. Nearly 500 followers on Facebook. We've got 497 right now. And that's the 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities Facebook page. We broadcast this show on Facebook Live, both live, but you can also watch it later on. That's the beauty of this show, and so we invite you to do this. I do want to talk a lot about ETSU today. By the way, right now, tentatively scheduled, assuming the SID department at ETSU can figure it out, we will have on the athletic director of East Tennessee State, Scott Carter, and talk about the football coaching search, talk about the status of ETSU athletics. He loves to say everything is wonderful, but that's my point of today's Marquis monologue. If you've ever wondered why so many of former ETSU rivals have gone on to bigger and better things while ETSU wastes their time for a decade in the Atlantic Sun, and then they come back to the Southern Conference, and yes, it's been a happy return. Football is back, although it loses. Basketball is back, and it wins. Okay, the conference doesn't have Davidson in it anymore. It doesn't have College of Charleston, Marshall. It doesn't have West Virginia and George Washington, for that matter. Of course, when they did have those members, ETSU wasn't a member. They were in the OVC. But even there, Western Kentucky has moved on to Conference USA, bigger and better things. So if you ever wondered why ETSU seems to be spinning their wheels while their former rivals have gone on to bigger and better things, look no further than the Friday press conference with Carl Torbush. Talked a little bit about this last week, right after it happened, and we were the only station to broadcast the Carl Torbush press conference on 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities. ETSU has a way of saying that everything is sensational, if not euphoric, even when times are bad. This is a case in point. And by the way, let me give you a comparison. I talked about this. The Tennessee Volunteers just went through a 4-victory football season. The coach is fired. The fans are angry. They want blood. ETSU just went through a 4-victory football season. And they just praised Carl Torbush on his way out as the second coming of Pop Warner. I mean, I have never seen a coach with an 11-22 record get the amount of praise that Carl Torbush did, and they went out of their way with nothing statement. When he was here, we only had one football. Yeah, it was a startup program. We get that. That's a nothing comment. That's a meaningless comment, what you just said. We didn't have a football here. By the way, they have footballs at, say, Incarnate Word, which is a losing FCS program. Talk about them in just a second because it does relate to ETSU. But if a new coach, I don't know who's coming or coaching Incarnate Word, okay? Forgive me for that. It's in Texas. But if they're coming off a really bad year, so if they're making a coaching change, does he have significant advantage because he has a team of 100 guys named Harry, but he has football helmets around? Usually you buy new football helmets every few years. I mean, they're doing wonderful things with technology. They're no longer made out of leather. Amazing, It was everything they could do to call Carl Torbush the greatest coach imaginable. I don't know if anybody who has received more praise for an 11-22 record. He's a gentleman. I get that. Lots of coaches on their way out after 10 years that didn't end as they would have liked were tremendous gentlemen. At ETSU football, Paul Hamilton. My favorite all-time baseball manager, Chuck Tanner. They were losers at the end. Great people. Don't get me wrong. And I do understand a retirement presser, you want to give that sentiment out. Bravo ETSU for that. But at the same time, we've got to address this 11-22 record. And when you have the sentiment, he built the foundation of ETSU football, that foundation says you're 11-22. I can only therefore believe that you're saying the foundation of ETSU football is 333 ball, is winning 1 out of every 3 games. That's not good. And you're satisfied with that, evidently. ETSU, like I said, no matter what happens there, Tristan Retke, who, by the way, beginning of the year, Carl Torbush claimed not to know who he was. I can kind of see it. Tristan Retke is the idiot who went with the gorilla mask to the Black Lives Matter rally, that guy, okay? I can imagine why you'd want to distance yourself from that. Don't get me wrong. But, I mean, it's almost to the point right now where, you want to say everything is sensational at ETSU, and you've got this sort of stuff going on. I mean, that's the culture of ETSU. Everything is wonderful when there's a sea of negative. Marky, the basketball team made the NCAAs. Bravo! Don't get me wrong. Yeah, the basketball program is doing well. We can give it praise. I give it praise. But they want to give everything praise. The garbage cans don't smell at ETSU, according to those. And this is the program, remember, that told us for how many years in the previous decade they were winning the right way, when winning the right way meant dropping football, dropping to a remedial conference, and by and large, losing. Somebody will point out, I remember, and they beat Belmont. And yeah, great. Play enough games, you're going to win a few. We get that. But the softball program was always a loser, despite a new facility that I debate whether or not it should have been built. Certainly not in the order of need would it have been built. And that's ETSU again. Why are we building a softball program? Is it to keep up with the Joneses and the Atlantic Sun like you're really doing? Is it because you have your facilities building order totally out of whack? No, they'd tell the press that it's because the softball team deserved it because of their grade point average. Well, those students are going to be gone in a year or two, A. B, does this mean that Northwestern, therefore, should have a better football stadium than Ohio State? That's the logic. It doesn't work out that way. But this is what ETSU will tell you. We're winning the right way. We're building our facilities out of order. We're not building them properly. Even the new football stadium that should be named after John Robert Bell. I mean, you roast on one side of it. They're winning the right. They're doing everything great. They lose 56-16 to Kennesaw State. Save me it's just the third-year program, Marky. Take a look at what's going on with startup football programs around college football. And by the way, and I've researched this, there have been far more colleges that have restarted football or have started up initially football than there have been that have dropped it. I mean, ETSU is one that restarted it. Georgia State is one that started it up from scratch. They had never had it, to my knowledge, before. They were on a club level, but, that's there have always been schools that have dropped football over the courses of time. Samford did. They brought it back. San Francisco, Marquette, historically. I mean, Chicago, although they play D3 now. But, they've dropped football. But generally speaking, it's been brought back. But the problem is you take a look at Kennesaw State, which brought back football, or I shouldn't say brought back, but they started football the same time ETSU did. And look at them now. They lost to Sam Houston State in the quarterfinals of the FCS playoffs. Anyone really want to debate that the Owls aren't in far better shape than ETSU? And the excuses made for that are just absolutely not fulfilling. The excuses that come out of ETSU for that, and all this. Alabama this year, they restarted their football program. They went 8-4. It's probably the Blazers' best football program ever. They're going to a bowl game. South Alabama won their first 17 games back. They won their first 17 games when the Jaguars started up a football program. And they're now playing FBS. So is Old Dominion. Their third year of a restart program in the FCS. Old Dominion made the playoffs. ETSU regressed from 4-7 from 5-6. But that press conference, you would have thought that Bobby Bowden was retiring. Now, what made the Torbush tenure so upsetting is he continually touted his plan for building a football program with 4-year players. And okay, that's fine. But they weren't winning. That's the thing. When you're losing your first game to a program that did have 22 transfers on it, but the majority of the roster was freshmen as well, and you lose that first game by 40 points, something's wrong. Yes, ETSU did beat them in overtime the next year. They couldn't build on it. By the way, you're telling me all this, that you're building with the 4-year players. You had 13 transfers on this year's team. 9 fewer than what Kennesaw State had when they started up their program and said, we don't want to go that way. But he's touting up into the final end, is Torbush, at the end of the Chattanooga loss. If you listen to the post-game show, oh, well, we did it the right. What happens when the JUCOs leave? Probably the same thing that happens when the 4-year players leave. You have to replace them. I don't know. I mean, Matt Wilgem going, oh, you built it the right way. You just lost 10-3. You couldn't score a touchdown with Austin Herrick, a real legitimate quarterback, behind center. Now, by the way, I'm critical of Torbush. I'm critical of the whole situation where everybody 11-22 and everything's great. What I do believe, and if you've listened to Tri-City Sports now, you know this, is that I was all in favor of bringing Torbush back. I mean, if you allowed him to build with 4-year players, to say you had this program, then give him the 4th season. In fact, I have gone on record of saying I would have given him a 4-year extension, because you have to do that, especially with a coach of this age, to show recruits coming in that he's going to be around, that that's the coach you're going to play for. It's done all the time in the major levels. ETSU, though, never couldn't figure this out. Even Paul Hamilton, coaches were year to year. And, I mean, Steve Forbes has more than 4 years left on his contract. Why not the ETSU football coaches? I got to wonder if ETSU is serious about winning on the gridiron with their way that they handle the contracts of their coaches. You know, the entire way this retirement, it's just bizarre. I have not seen anything like it. Scott Carter announced he knew of Torbush's desire not to return when he went to him with a contract a few days ago. Okay, fine. Why don't you, therefore, say, okay, guess what? We're calling a press conference now. Instead, we were told it took days to organize a press conference. Why? There weren't former players flying in from out of town saying how great Torbush was. There's the AD, there's the president, there's the SID, there's Torbush. That's who spoke. Took about an hour. This is a press conference. You could have put that together in a few hours. If one of those guys were out of town for whatever reason, you know, if Mike White, I don't know, if Mike White was out of town for the basketball program or whatever, fine, you have Kevin Miller come out and do the introduction. Or you have somebody else. You have the athletic director do the, you know, if he's out of town, fine. You have a statement. You have a phone call. It's the way it's done. And it should be done that way because there's a early recruiting deadline of December 20th. Now, we can debate whether or not this is all that important for ETSU, because I have a feeling that the early signing period in college football recruiting, what's going to happen is that that's going to benefit. This is my take on it. We'll see if it works out this way. I think the FBS schools, they're going to really press and try to sign the players they want. You know, the top prospects, most of them committed already. So why not just put your pen to paper, quit having the recruiters call you, focus in on where you're going to go to school. I think that that'll be a big sell coming forward. And then the FCS programs, I think, in that 6-week period between the next signing date and the early signing date, what you'll have is the people that have not signed with the major colleges, the ETSUs at that point. What I believe will happen is that that's where they go out and really start trying to bring in those major recruits or those recruits, the ones that haven't been signed. They're the ones that can say, hey, look, those early signing, you know, that quarterback, he signed with South Carolina. You're not going to play there. But if you come to ETSU, we'll redshirt you and you might start here for 4 years. They might do something like that. And I think that's how the recruiting will go. But right now, I mean, there is an early signing period. Certainly there are some people you'd like to ink right now. And what are they doing? I mean, it's entirely bizarre. You've got he's still the coach. He's retiring, but he's still the coach of Torbush. I've never seen this. I would have thought that common courtesy as a coach, you'd go to one of your former staff and say, well, I would like you to think, here's my handpicked, all right, the popular Billy Taylor, defensive coordinator. Member of the BFFF, helped bring football back, didn't just become the defensive coordinator. I'd like to, you know, all right, in the interim, I'm stepping down, he's the head coach. Think about him for the future. He'll sign, he's done the recruiting, he'll go. Or Mike O'Kane, used to be the coach at North Carolina State. I know people are on him for some of the play calls as an offensive coordinator. You know what? That goes along with being an offensive coordinator. Bring him in the interim. Had the former North Carolina's coach, why not the former NC State coach? When does it take all these days to prepare a press conference? Where do you think you're going to bring in recruits with coach that's not going to be there? Carter says he's going to do a search and he has no timetable for it. Okay. that would indicate to me he's not satisfied with the current staff. Maybe that's a good thing, and I hate to say that because I like Billy Taylor. He's the second guest we ever had on the show. I mean, I like him personally. As a journalist, I can say, okay, you're 4-7 coach. I understand that. As a person, as Marquis Bilson, I really wish the best for Billy Taylor. I wish the best for Mike O'Kane. He's been on the show. I bet, all these guys. Wish doom on them, certainly. Carl Torbush, wish him the best in retirement. Douglas Lake, go there. It ought to be fun. But can you imagine if they did bring in someone from the current staff after a search? I mean, that's not exactly an initial vote of confidence. And why wouldn't you just make the hire then and get all the wheels rolling right off the bat and, start... Right now, it's like the football program is on hiatus. Perhaps these are indications, since they did not hire... But this is the whole thing. If you didn't hire after the retirement somebody on the current staff to be the head coach, then guess what? That's sort of an indication, well, you know what? We're not happy with that 11-22 start. Then why don't you say something along those lines? Why don't you give that indication? Right now, you're telling us as if it is the most wonderful thing and that don't worry, we had Carl Torbush. It's like that scene in Newt Rockney All-America where Newt Rockney, we lost the game. We don't care. We got you, Coach. Cheer for Notre Dame. It's too sappy for whenever that was made. I mean, in the 1930s. What about now? My goodness. Why can't ETSU just say something like that instead of trying to push this on us? I mean, it's 11-22. I want you to address that. Torbush is likable. We get that. I want you to address right now 11-22 without saying, don't forget that Torbush is likable. Don't forget that Torbush is likable. I'll tell you who might replace him coming up.
Holiday parties, celebrations. Let Happy Hour Tri-City Liquor be your one-stop destination. Get your